Anyway, let's get into this. So I want to talk a little bit about nihilism specifically first, and that is because we need to sort of get this out of the way. That basically the nihilists believe that, to make it most simple, to say it simply, nothing matters. That, life was created out of, or not necessarily created, but formed, let's say, or originated through random processes. So that's a very nihilistic perception that it just happened, and it doesn't really matter. It's not connected to anything. We're just dust in the wind, if you will, if you were to quote Bob Dylan on this particular argument here. So that it's just a bunch of random nonsense, and therefore human behavior doesn't matter. So you could do this or you could do that. It doesn't matter. I could punch you in the face. I could not punch you in the face. It doesn't matter one way or another whether I do it or not. It just happens. And a lot of nihilists also believe in lack of free will, that you're just controlled by these forces. You don't really have control. Nothing matters. You have no control. This is a very popular idea among nihilists. You just go with the flow, and so you don't necessarily have to think, and because what you do doesn't really matter. You just go with the flow, and so all these different ideas are interrelated, and it really is up to the individual to really decide how far they take this philosophy, how far they take these nihilist ideas. And, depending on how intelligent you are, you might actually take it pretty far, and you might take it as far to say that, well, nothing matters at all, life has no significance and no meaning, and what I do doesn't matter. And you gotta admit that sort of nihilistic perception probably is, it could bring people towards suicide, thinking, well, there's too much pain then. In that case, there's too much pain in the world, and I just can't deal with it. And so a lot of people just, they decide to take it out. And I can understand if you take that philosophy to its to the extent that it can go. If you take it all the way, then you kind of get there. You get this random emptiness and nothingness that you're sort of left with. Now, that doesn't mean that that's true. It just means that your way of thinking is based on a specific premise. And because you have this basic premise, all the following ideas that you have in your mind are based on that. And so so nihilism is not based on some kind of objective thought. It's based on the feelings or the belief of the individual. So they're believing that this is true from some sort of influence. They've constructed a premise within their construct, the construct of in their mind. So this construct that they've constructed, which is based on some sort of premise that they've thought of, or been influenced by they've been influenced by some sort of outside force, which has caused them to take on this particular way of thinking about things, has caused these other ideas to sort of flow out. And so that's basically what's happened. And we have to be careful because we are constantly manipulated by these invisible forces, which is our own perceptionality. And so you have to be careful what you're influenced by and what you partake in, because if you take on these sort of ways of thinking, you may do it subconsciously. So unconsciously, you construct this premise that this is true through some sort of influence of some sort. You read something, you heard something, or something like this, and then these ideas can just flow. And depending on how intelligent you are and how introspective you are, you might take this pretty far, and that happens to a lot of people. And so this is kind of an extreme negative perception that can have a lot of negative consequences for you, people around you. It's just not something that's healthy. We have to be really careful to fight off these invisible forces, because they're pretty bad. And so you got to be very careful with your perception. So, all right. So I kind of went over nihilism a little bit. Talked about how far it can go. What are the real consequences to take this philosophy all the way? And what it really pertains to is this perception that nothing really has significance. That it's all just random and it's all artificial. And so life doesn't really mean anything and nothing really matters in the end. And you might think that, well, okay, so then the thing that matters is my well-being, right? So just feeling good matters. So I just want to add this one last point on this, is that you might think that feeling good is the highest morality in that case. And then so you might get into drugs, you might get into alcohol abuse and things like this, and that can really happen to people. And so and to do these kind of things, especially drugs, I think you have to kind of have the mentality that nothing matters. Otherwise, you can't justify physically harming yourself through abusing chemicals like this. So it's something seriously to think about. It's really something seriously to think about whether you're following into this nihilistic way of thinking. Now let's get to the spirituality part of this, because there's a huge contrast between these two philosophical notions and these two different ways of thinking. So with spirituality, so you're thinking, this is your premise, that there's something more significant going on, that there is purpose or significance or meaning. And this is something that humans crave. We want, we need some sort of meaning, some sort of significance, so that we can be productive and we can do something. Because human beings are emotional creatures, so we need some sort of emotional motivation to do something. They actually took, there's some people who, they lack the emotional part of their brain, and so that part of their brain is gone, but they're very logical. They have full access to the logical part of their brain. Those people can't even tie their shoes. They can't decide whether it's something they should do or something they shouldn't do. Does it matter or does it not matter? They can't use logic alone. And so motivation is highly based upon emotion. And so you need some kind of positive emotion to guide you. Otherwise, you don't really have anything. You can guide yourself through negative emotion, but if you think negative emotions are going to get you to a good place by using negative emotions as something to guide you along, then you're going to be very disappointed, because filling your life with all those negativities and self-destructive tendencies is certainly not something that's going to be positive for you in the end. Now, so we have this emotional sort of necessity in terms of motivating ourselves. And so spirituality really does get in there. It gets in there and provides that. It provides those needs, which allows you to be motivated. And that's a very good thing. Now, later on, I will argue the middle path, the, not spiritual, not nihilistic, but something in between. We can talk about that later on. But for now, I'm going to stick, because I really want to cover my tracks on that. But I'll do that in another video. So let me just continue here. So spirituality. So the thing is, you're believing in something bigger, something more significant. And so you feel more connection to everything. And so everything seems to matter even more. Or more rather, not necessarily even more. So, and you may think everything is interconnected. Like, for example, Christianity believes that God is a part of everything and manipulates everything, that has control over everything, so therefore everything is connected and intertwined in a manner, and in that sense everything matters. And that there's focus specifically with that tradition of spirituality that human behavior matters, that the things you do have consequences, and it plays out this construct through talking about the heaven and hell, where if you behave good, then you get to go to heaven. If you behave bad, you go to hell. And what is bound in heaven is bound on earth, blah, 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 blah. So basically, the behavior that you do constructs your reality. And so if you're a total scumbag, then your life is going to turn total shit. And I actually do see that quite often happen to people. And if you're a good guy, you're trying to help people out, and you care about other people, you're going to get those things in return, and that's going to make your life more fruitful and enjoyable. And in the end, you can have all the success in the world, you can have all the money, you can have all the food, all the drugs, all the alcohol, anything, and all that stuff, and it's not going to fulfill you. Everybody's trying to fill this empty hole. What we really need in the end is connection with other people and love from other people, and acceptance, and if you don't find that you're the most happy when you're with somebody that you can really connect with, then you're missing out. You really are missing out. It's something that's very important. That's why we watch these videos. That's why you're watching my video right now, listening to me talk, because you feel some sort of connection with me, and so we're having this dialogue. That's why you write comments, because I say something that resonates with you, and then you write that in the comments. And so this is something that's very important. So what I'm trying to say is, a lot of these spiritual traditions provide these sort of significances and this specific significance that people need to be happy and to grow as individuals and to continue, living on. And I think of it kind of like a mental technology, if you will. It gives you sort of these abilities, like you're superhuman or something, in a sense. So let me see if I can think of anything else. So basically, spirituality. The thing is, if you believe that there's this all-encompassingness that you're a part of, in terms of some sort of force controlling things and guiding things, then you don't have to be afraid if you're on the side of good. You can be courageous because somebody's got your back, son, and you can do your best. You can really seriously fight and kick total butt, because those things to flip it back for a moment, on the nihilistic side of things, you got to be scared to death all the frickin' time, because all you see is darkness. You don't see any hope. So you just see that, well, you're just trying to not hurt. You're just trying not to suffer. Whereas the other person will fight and will suffer toward a good end, then ultimately be able to build their life towards something that's even better. And so there's huge amounts of power in spiritual perceptions and a spiritual way of looking at the world and seeing it in that way, seeing the world in its best light. And not science, not anything is able to really break this debate. This is an age-old long debate. Now, I really think that a lot of people who make these choices between, well, I'm going to be spiritual or I'm going to be nihilistic, screw this. I think that this distinction has a lot to do with pre-existing behaviors that people have. So if somebody is a scumbag, they're probably going to be nihilistic. And if somebody is a nice guy, positive, and trying to help people and cares about the world, probably going to be a bit spiritual. And so I think there's this interesting underlying layer of behavior determining the philosophical choices of people, not necessarily the philosophy creating the behavior. Not that the philosophy of a person can't create the behavior of a person, but I think a lot of philosophy and ways of thinking are based on or chosen based upon people's actual pre-existing behavior. It goes both ways, but I think the majority of the time people are trying to justify behaviors through their philosophies rather than the opposition of the philosophy creating the behavior. And so, if you're a good guy and you really care about helping people and you think life matters and everything is awesome, then you're going to really levitate towards spiritual behavior. You're not even going to look at nihilism. And that goes the same for nihilistic people, whether, if you have a lot of attitude issues, you're suffering all the time, you got some sort of disease or something and everything sucks, you're gonna really lean toward nihilism. It's gonna be hard to be spiritual. And so these sort of pre-existing behaviors that you already have a strong they really manipulate whether you're gonna choose one philosophy or the other. Now, spirituality, nihilism, very extreme. So, in another video, if you guys like this, if this was kind of informative, if this made you think, then I'm going to talk about the middle path. Is there a middle path, and what sort of properties does the middle path have? Is it worth taking them? What do we do? Because the thing is, in the end, we have to choose to some extent. You can't just take an idle approach to things. It's very hard to take that idle middle approach. We'll talk about that and see what we can do with that. But I'm going to leave it here for now. I would encourage people to consider a spiritual way of looking at things and thinking about things. You don't have to be a part of a religion, but try to look at the world and see if there's any merit to those perceptions rather than just being nihilistic. And look at the cause and effect of behaviors and see what's really working for you. And I think the behavior is proof for a specific approach or way of thinking. We're constructs of nature. Nature's determined what's possible. It's not necessarily random. That's my thinking. And so if you partake in a particular behavior and it has huge negative consequences for you, it's because that doesn't work. In nature, it doesn't work. Okay? So if you have a particular way of looking at things and it does work, it does work. In nature, it works. And so that really has a significance and a meaning to it that I think we should consider. So that's it for today, you guys. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Peace out.